Hello and welcome to episode 63 of the Trapping Today podcast, brought to you by Kaatz Brothers Lures, KAATZBROS.com. Thanks Kyle and Kellen for supporting the podcast, and it's great to have them as sponsors. As you can hear, my voice is completely shot, so let's get into the interview. I won't belabor you listening to my voice any longer, and we'll listen to me talking with John Chagnon.
We've got John Chagnon from PCS Outdoors and Lenon Lures in northern Michigan. Is that right, John?
Yep. We're northern Michigan as we're below the bridge on the northern part. We work up in Oscoda and we live in Augrey. But true northern Michigan is where I spent a big chunk of my life, and that's where I met Mr. Lenin up in the upper peninsula of Michigan.
The UP, okay. So where you're at, we would call that the northern lower?
Northern lower, correct.
Okay, and you spent some time in the UP. So it's great to have you here, John. I really appreciate it, and I think a lot of the listeners will really appreciate hearing your perspective. And I think a great thing would be if we can get an idea of your background, how you got started trapping, and how you got to where you're really passionate about trapping.
My father, my grandfather, trapped and they hunted and they fished. They didn't trap to the extent that I have in my lifetime, but they were the ones that exposed me to other trappers that were avid trappers. My father was a raccoon hunter, so you get the crossover. You're going to the fur buyer and you meet other people there. Basically, we lived on a little creek in the thumb of Michigan, and my father, one day when I was 7 years old, gave me a muskrat trap, and I remember checking it 2 times a night because those sets were an apple on a stick, and I had to get there because I didn't know what a drowner set was. And I remember the heart pumping when you see those waves when an animal hasn't properly dispatched down a drowner wire. And after battling a couple muskrats, I figured how to make a drowner set.
Yep.
Yep. But basically that trap led to, at the time, you could buy several traps by selling a muskrat. Maybe not today. You might have to get a muskrat to buy a trap.
So this would have been back in the 70s?
Back in the 70s, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of, it's funny, a lot of people talk about that. One trap is where they got their start, and then
and it's all there. You just get the bug,
So how long were you in the Upper Peninsula?
Oh, I went up there in the it would have been early 90s, and then I left in 2005, so approximately 15 years.
And have you trapped every year since you got started that as a kid?
Yes. In fact, this was one of the years when I was trying not to, and it just took somebody to come into PCS Outdoors and say there was a beaver problem back in December, and so much for not going trapping. And the beaver pond led to putting some canine sets, and you know where that led to.
You can't get away from it, huh?
Nope, and I was having a blast getting up way early and checking them before going to work.
Yeah. I remember last year we were emailing back and forth, and you were running a coyote line before work. That
correct.
Had to be.
This year I'm more limited than most years because we're busy at Lenin Lures and PCS Outdoors. Want to take care of customers. Trying to, as I told you earlier when we first got on the phone. My daughter's going to become a CPA, and I guess to encourage her, and just I never did, and I have all the credentials, so I'm kind of studying. So hopefully as I get older, that extra knowledge will help me.
Oh, I'd love to have that knowledge. It's coming around tax time, and it's the worst time of year for me.
Definitely, and we ain't going to do anybody any good if we don't keep our businesses legal and moral. You can have the best products in the world, but if you don't take care of the government, you're not going to stay in business.
Yeah. So you probably have the most interesting story from a trapping supply business and how that all came about. Can you give us a little background on that?
Oh, well, I guess I was up in the UP when I launched my first. I was still working full-time, and I had a part-time trap company, and it was mail order before the internet, and I was selling Lenin lures and BMI traps at the time. Wimpy was a guy that retired, and he got a hold of me, and then I became a dealer that way. And so I did it part-time through mail order, and then I was an accountant my whole life, so I was working in a veneer mill, sawmill that had 400 employees as an assistant controller, and I managed to learn how to make a website in the early 90s and for the timber company, and subsequently I was still, Northwest, Minnesota Trap Line, those companies were in existence, and those were guys I did business with then and today. But at that time, nobody was on the web where you could buy trapping supplies. Cabela's wasn't on yet. Google didn't exist. Yeah. I still remember the first day after I had website for years, my customers calling up all excited how they found me on Google. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Today, it's just taken second nature. But so I was working and just basically decided one day I was going to create a website with trapping supplies. And some point back in the 90s, if you grabbed for fishing game or Trapper and Predator Caller, where you see our 2-page ads for PCS Outdoors and 1-page ads for Lenin Lures now, well, back in that time frame, basically there was nobody with a web address in all the trapping magazines, and my advertising budget was $20 a month, and basically I was probably busier then than I am today, and all I had to do was put a little classified that said Chagnon's the first online trapping store.
Nice.
And proof is in all those old Fur Fish Game magazines. Yeah.
Sometimes it's important to be a little bit of a pioneer and do something no one else wants to do.
Yeah, and then to this day, even though I work in an aerospace company, I really enjoy my job because I do the books there and the programming for the factory floor. Just enjoy that aspect of the job, but at the same token, it's really cool because PCS Outdoors is connected in that building and different buildings on an old Air Force base that has been turned over to civilian purposes, such as what we're doing, aircraft parts and trapping supply manufacture and sales. And so I could be talking to somebody from Delta Airlines on one phone call, and on a different phone call I could be talking to a trapper in Maine. So
that's just amazing. So airplane component parts and a trapping supply company all under kind of a one parent company.
Yes, one parent company.
So how on earth did you convince PCS Phoenix Composite Solutions to get into the trapping supply business?
Well, do you remember back the year when GM went bankrupt?
Yes.
What was it, 2009?
Yeah, around there.
Well, basically when that happened, folks in Michigan, including, we had at that point almost 200 employees approximately, and we had to lay off a bunch of people. And being in accounting, and at that time we didn't even have a full-time HR manager, so I didn't like that fact of, nor did the president of the company, Mr. Scanlon, we didn't like the fact of having to, all those families that didn't have jobs. So we have a weekly meeting, and we did back then, and we still do, where all the division managers get together and we say what's going on, and we have annual meetings. Well, so when that big layoff occurred and the economy was doing terrible, the president of the company asked all the different division managers, which we have 5 different division managers, if anybody has an idea, come see me, what we can do. And I basically knocked on his door 15 minutes later and told him that we needed to create a trapping supply company, and we wouldn't be laying off people again because they would be making cable trap stakes and traps and all the stuff, drags and all the stuff that we do now. So if there is people that aren't busy in aerospace, then we have plenty of stuff to put them to work in the trapping industry.
That is really neat. So did you...
So now we have one of the lowest unemployment rates as a company because we just don't lay off people. Even in the trapping industry, all the folks that work for me, we have approximately 10 that work in our trapping division. And even when the slow season comes, we've done a great job of retaining people, because when a lot of the other companies will hire seasonal employees, we don't let them go at the end of the year. We manufacture parts and train them, and So each year is more enjoyable when we get to the busy season because we have the stocks to get to the customers and the personnel that know the products and have a mixture of actual trappers aboard.
So you're in this meeting with the division managers, and they're asking the boss is asking about ideas. Had you been thinking about this for a while, or did this just pop into your head like?
I was having serious withdrawals when I made a decision, and now my daughter's through college, and it's been very successful. As I said, I'm studying for the CPA exam because she's out-educated me now, and I just got to stay up with the kid, which I'm pretty proud of her. But anyways, I guess it's something that gets in the blood, just like trapping. So when I decided that I was going to go to work in the aerospace company, I kind of ceased operations for that little time period. And I guess I just always enjoyed, talking to trappers and dealing in that industry. And I always kept good relations with all the suppliers, and it was quite easy to get started back up. And, many years later now, it was one of the best choices I ever did in my life.
Yeah, so
I'm doing what I enjoy,
Absolutely. And you get to mix it up a little bit, like you said. You get to...
Yeah, and doing just one thing, to me, is boring, and I like to keep busy and do things I like to do, and this allows me to do it.
Yeah. So now PCS, it kind of seems to be everywhere. You're in the magazines, and you're on Trapping Today. You're all over the place on the web. Was it a challenge to get there, or were you able to do it because you had capital from the aerospace company, or how?
No, actually, we probably got 10,000 to start with, and I believe ever since we just run as a divisional statement show that we hold our own. We basically do a thing where we require so many sales per employee, no matter what division you're in, and I don't ever ask for additional employees unless my sales per month justify that extra personnel, and that's my motivation to generate sales and profits because I want, more better employees, and the only way to get that is and sustain it is to have sales and profits. And therefore you have to create products that are better than what's on the market or as good as anything else on the market and provide service, and that's just something that our team has pulled off because at this point it's way beyond me. It's all the folks that have stuck with me all through the years. My assistant controller, he's been with me now over 10 years. My main supervisor on the PCS Outdoors division, she's been approaching 10 years now under me. And so we have low turnover and good retention. This year we hired one of, I think, only 20 people that have a certain certification in the state of Michigan for Adobe Photoshop and things that will allow us to do a much better presentation because we can build the best products in the world, but if you can't take good images and videos to show those to the people, so you'll start seeing a lot better photos and stuff like that coming off of PCS Outdoors and related sites.
Yep. So basically started small and just kind of worked your way up a little bit at a time.
Oh, definitely baby steps because you got to occasionally take back steps. I remember I had about a year just in between where we trained a person how to do things on e-com and the web, and he got a really good job with the state of Michigan using those same skills. But, you had to slow down then till you got another person. So I just had to hold the fort, on some other things I wanted to do until I could find the proper, replacement.
Yep. It must have been interesting with training employees who maybe didn't have a real background in trapping, didn't know a lot about trapping.
This is northern Michigan. This is what you do.
Okay, good.
We draw them in. People jump from other jobs to an interesting job in trapping where they know they can also do some manufacturing and have job security. So I think all the trappers, I have a couple really avid trappers that I try to look out for what employees want to do. I want to retain them within our organization, and I've had people that I've given over to maintenance and our repair division just because they could do better for the work. The aerospace parts are obviously a higher margin than a bottle of lure,
Yeah. but they didn't mind. So generally, they didn't mind smelling the skunky lures and.
No, a funny story was so. I think everybody appreciated it when we started out in the early years, and this meeting I tell you we went to, and we had a couple, I called them disasters, because we would drop some skunk musk, and with this building connected and always over 100 employees at one time. So those odors would go through the building. Well, one spring after the busy season, I went and talked to the president, and I acquired a building that we could move the lures from the one building out where everybody was, so they were segregated. So now we have what we call the lure building, and that has all the urines and lures. And I remember announcing that in a Tuesday meeting, and generally I'm a pretty boring kind of guy, so I don't get much applause. Yeah. But when I announced that by Monday morning we would have I announced it on a Friday before we were going to move all the lures, that we were moving everything out. Boy, I was a favorite employee in the company for about a week. But you really got to hand it to all the people that, after those hard times in the economy, and they appreciated the contribution that came from PCS Outdoors, even though small compared to the aerospace, but helped with stability.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really neat. And it just shows that people are faced with tough times like that. They can really they can pull through and willing to work. A lot of people.
I'm an avid fan. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
I get fired up and really like talking on these topics. And in Michigan, is marijuana legal in other than for medical reasons in Maine?
Yeah, just got passed in the last election.
For recreational purposes?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Same thing has happened here in Michigan, and I truly think, I've worked in timber industry and some other industries in my career before PCS Outdoors, and the quality of the workforce, I feel, is just so much better when we're a federal, we're controlled by the feds for the aerospace parts. Obviously, you don't want people that are intoxicated working on parts that go into airplanes.
Right.
And so there's mandatory drug programs, and you just can't have that, and there's random drug testing. Well, and I know other industries also have that, but I'm just a firm believer that the quality of the workforce is so much better. And now I see in northern Michigan, everywhere we go, just dispensaries being opened up and billboards, and just kind of scary to me. But
yeah, it's definitely different.
The majority want it, so that's why we have government. I guess
right.
We still can express our opinions, though.
That's absolutely right, especially on podcasts. There's no FCC controlling this.
Gotcha. So the podcast is simply something that somebody can click on your website and then see our discussion.
Yeah, and you can get it on iTunes. If you have iTunes, you can just pull that up, and you can get. I think this will be like episode 60 something. So all the previous episodes, you can just click on and listen to them.
That's pretty cool. I have to check it out after it gets done. And I find that right off of your website. Eh?
Yep. Yeah, you can. If you anything on your like, if you have an Apple phone, like an iPhone, you can get it on iTunes really easy. Like I have a Samsung phone, Android, and I have a special app that I pull up and I listen to.
Okay. What's my phone? My phone's a Samsung.
Yeah, so I have about 30 different podcasts that I listen to regularly from a wide variety of different topics. And there's a couple on trapping. And so I'll just pull those up, and when a new episode comes up, I just click on that and just. I
know Clint Locklear has some. He calls it trapping radio or some similar thing. Is that a podcast? Is what it is.
Yep, that's a podcast. That's only available on his website. But yeah, he was the first one. He was doing that about at least 5 years ago. He's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, but I never even listened to one of those. I was just aware that it was happening. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but if you go on to trappingtoday.com and just
you'll
see the thing pop up on the podcast. Every time I put a podcast episode comes out, it shows up there, and you can listen to it right from the site on your computer.
So, really neat.
Yeah. So anyway, speaking of media, I wanted to talk about a few things that you've done, because I found it was really neat that you did these videos a while back. You did one on canine trapping, you did a water trapping video, and I just finished.
Really want to do some new stuff, because since those videos were done, we have essentially, like you'll see in the coming months by spring, after the busy season, we have a series of we've already released numerous products, but when our ads come out now, and actually, believe it or not, the ad campaigns are going to jump into 10 additional publications, and none of them are going to get reduced, but we're actually going to have the majority of our ad focusing a big USA flag at the bottom, and all the new products that we're releasing.
So you're going to be on different publications other than trapping?
Well, we're still going to be in all the same trapping magazines you see, but there's many state magazines that not everybody sees. Mm-hmm. So we're actually going to jump into state magazines with the release of a lot of new products. Nice. And making sure that we make the awareness everywhere. And, when you're successful, you have to have write-offs. So it's just hand in hand with expanding the business a little bit and making sure you got some tax write-offs to offset the sales.
Yeah, so though you're thinking you might be doing some new videos then in the future.
We definitely want to take a focus, because it's funny when you say those videos, they were years ago, and to this day it's one of the best forms of advertising for the little amount of time we spend. Some of those things were shot 10 years ago, and I still get calls every day on our website. When somebody places an order, we say, did you see us in Fur Fishing Game, or did you find us on Google? And it still remains like 20-30% where people say they're clicking from a YouTube clip that they're looking at. And we haven't released too many new videos in the last couple of years on YouTube.
Yep. But you also had the DVDs, right?
Yeah, and the DVDs, which I won't do a DVD again until I go trap in Maine or do something, exceptionally different. Yeah.
And when were those put out? Were they all around the same time?
They were put out probably, I want to guess now, it's been a while, could have been in 2009 or something.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that was...
Could have been 10, I'm not even sure. A few years back. But even video production, videos don't sell like they did 20 years ago. They sold left and right, and people could charge even more. But I see the cost of videos keep coming down, and that's probably a trend that'll continue.
Well, there's so much that's free now.
Yeah, the free on the web. In fact, there's serious consideration of just putting more on the web, because people will find it, and then you can control them just going over to see if they do like the products you're showing, then they can go to your site and buy it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But definitely going to be one of the forms of, plus it's fun making the videos, and the nice thing is everybody in the company realizes, because, it's a team, and I couldn't do it without everybody else, and they're encouraging, going, we need you to do some more videos.
That's really cool.
There's, when the team members are serious, knowing that I need to get out there, and it's a good thing.
That's great. And I think you had a few where you've been at conventions, maybe you talked to an old trapper.
Yeah, and I guess to a degree, when they're not fully professional and they're just on the spot when you're doing things like that, I think trappers probably appreciate that, because it's not made up. It's just, that's what we do when we trap, and that's why we go to conventions, and that's what we enjoy doing. That's what they enjoy doing, or they wouldn't be watching the videos.
Absolutely. So what about new products? What do you have in mind that we could expect from PCS in the next year or two?
Most of the new ones, I don't want to announce it, because then competitors would know what we're doing, because even though most competitors are friends, or I don't really want to put a product out. Everybody has seen our knives that we did, so I guess I can tell you that the knives were a huge success. The Asabo Superior Fleshing Knife that we partnered with Dexter, because Dexter had the best steel. Trappers knew it, and we just wanted to add some special touches, handles that wouldn't fall apart like the wood, and ergonomics for what fur buyers told us they wanted in a fleshing knife. Well, because of that success, we're going to add immediately a couple knives will hit the market pretty quick that are unique to the fur industry.
Okay.
So I could tell you that one. We've already put them on the website. They haven't hit the ads, but you ever buy a auger for a drill and it turns rusty as soon as you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we basically painted and powder coated the augers and put a better auger, the tip, and made it a less price than what's currently on the industry and stamp made in the USA. So
Yep.
there's one that's coming out. And we put them on the website just about a month or two ago, and we've already gone through several hundred. So
Nice.
that one's going to be a guaranteed success. We came out a couple of years ago. The other one I can tell you that hasn't probably hit the magazines yet is we made small rotating drags, which, the small coon drags, they hook up a lot quicker, and the rotating, I wanted to make something that was in the USA that would be better and have a better price, and we're able to make these rotating drags cheaper than a welded drag, believe it or not, and it actually hooks up quicker. Well, what we did is our latest one, those were a success, but people want the big drags. The Coyote is the current market, what everybody's going after, so we made a 2-pound drag, and we made it more affordable than the standard drags you see out on the market that are 2 pounds, but they have that rotating feature.
Okay.
And a third of the cost.
Yep.
So
Good.
that's a product that I can tell you, and hopefully some of the other ones get done here in the next 6 months, and watch for them on the website or the magazines. You'll see a significant, we're ready to submit anytime in the next few weeks, but then it takes usually a month or two before they start hitting the magazines.
Yeah.
So by early summer, late spring, you should see a major update to the ad campaign, which will let you see a lot of the products.
Whoever came up with the rotating drag idea, I think that's pretty neat.
Combination of the guys doing the machining and myself.
Yeah, that's just because you sent me a pack of them at one time, and of course
those were probably the small ones. I don't think I got you the big one.
No, they were the small
really
ones.
Cool.
But I really like the design, the way you stamped that, and to where it was, like you said, it's not welded, but it's not going to come.
And I had
there's
a little
no way it's going to come
with
out.
Those first ones, and they're for small animals. So when we made the bigger one, we made sure there ain't no way an elephant's going to pull out. In fact, in my opinion, some of the best traps on the market are the MBs, and it's the opinion, I think, too, of thousands of trappers. Well, when we test this equipment, we use a machine that we actually hook an MB 650 and the components and J hooks on that, and that's our test to make sure that gives before the drag will.
Yep. Wow.
So
Good.
That's the point when we know it's strong enough, because I've never heard anybody say the chain or the connections on those traps break.
So what's the first thing that gives? Is it like one of the J hooks or something?
The J hooks, and it's been some time since we did that. So once we did it and seen that the drag didn't, and I think since they've been out, I had one person tell me that it slipped, but that's out of thousands and thousands of them. So it could have been a mispunch that quality didn't catch. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Same thing happens with cable stakes. Whether you use a Neil, this is an important, of all the phone calls I get, cable stakes, it's literally thousands and thousands of cable stakes get made and shipped, okay? Well, I get the call every now and then, and we have a quality procedure. So we test every dozen or two, by actually putting them in a machine, pulling to make sure, our compression is hitting it right, and et cetera. Well, it's very possible that the punch misses one time. So my point here is when a trapper goes out in the field, you should anyways make sure that your anchor's set before you leave the trap. Because if you can pull that trap out of the ground, so can the animal. Right. Well, the other thing you're going to catch, because it's really a trapper's responsibility, if that equipment is malfunctioned, whether I made it or somebody else, you don't want to leave the trap there and have the animal go away with the trap. So you should always do that test, because that'll identify if equipment's faulty before you leave it.
Yep, absolutely. So that's going to be a real interesting, maybe difficult, challenging game, is trying to, it's all the big trapping supply companies are coming out with new products and innovating, and I don't know how much
it's a good thing. Yeah,
it is.
That's great for the trappers. We didn't have that choice when we were a kid, my friend?
But you got to stay on top of things. It keeps you on your game, right?
Yeah, it makes it more interesting for everybody. And, and we're just trying to come up with something better that someone else did, and someone's going to try to make something better than ours. And just like computer science, how everything is accelerated, production of trapping equipment will tag along right with it. So who knows when we'll see the next thing like a dog-proof trap hit the market, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just when you think everything's been thought up of, then something else comes along.
Yeah.
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 Is this stuff like, do you get patents on this stuff, or does it just depend on what the product is?
For the most part, our company president, he's had many patents, and we don't patent. We usually copyright. So in other words, we copyright things and put them into ad campaigns. And, we always look at it as trappers know, the rotating drag. To my knowledge, I can't ever remember seeing a rotating drag. So if competition comes out with a rotating drag, they can call it a rotating drag. They just can't call it an Asabo rotating drag because that's our copyright. So that's just a much more affordable protection.
Yeah.
Yep. Because when you're and that's what's important, you're advertising, and honestly, if somebody took some of our designs, there's nothing we could do, and we could just be proud that, just like the guy that developed the Grizz Trap, my hat's off to him to this day as one of the best, improvements to traps in, a century. So, and now it's used by many people, and the only thing I've seen from patents in the trapping industry is the disputes that go on, and that's not good for anybody.
No, for me, if I were in that situation, I think I'd just walk away from it. It's just not worth fighting about.
No, it's not worth it, and that's not why we're in business, to sell trapping supplies or to harvest fur. And yeah,
and they're really, it's a relatively big industry, but it's not
that big. And so many times people will send samples and want to know if you're going to, and they get sugar plums in their eyes of what could be sold. And, things do sell, and they can sell by the thousands, but that's the best of the best products. A lot of products, you can have books or videos, and they may only sell, even in a busy organization, only 20 copies all year. It's just not a million sales type industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Products, yeah.
Now, you were saying, though, that you were kind of surprised that even with the low fur market, you're still seeing quite a bit of business.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because we used to sell 500 dozen DPs in a week, okay? We still sell 100 dozen DP in a week, where guys are buying a dozen at a time, okay? Now, with not as many trappers harvesting raccoon, which has been hit the hardest by the depressed price from the good prices they were at when we were selling 500 dozen DPs a week. Well, basically all those raccoon have populated, and everybody that has a bait pile has become a raccoon trapper. Now that market may go away. I know Michigan has, next year, I don't believe deer hunters are going to be allowed to bait. So that'll actually even further depress the dog-proof market.
Yeah, but like you said, the guys that are still
and then the heritage. Yeah, and the heritage of it, the guys still, so many people want to take their kid out and show them what they did. And the young folks, my hat's off to them even more than us when we were younger, because we had a higher fur market. There's a lot of young guys out there that are really into it, and this industry isn't going to go away. I was told at that point when I left one of the best jobs in the UP that I was going to starve. Actually, first I was told I was going to starve when I moved to the UP. I gained an extra 10 pounds and got married. They think it sounded pretty okay. And then basically when I said I was going to create a trapping company way back then, they said I was going to double starve and none of that has ever occurred. And I can only see brightness in the future for the whole industry. And, you know, it may not be in the same way furs were sold, but, you know, if a trapper's creative, there's a million and one ways to, you know, make it all work.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've never really seen a high fur market. 2014 was, I guess, as high as I've seen.
Those were good. That was a year I was trapping to do those videos. Prior to that, and I sent a bunch of furs to the auction. It was one of the only times I jumped up when I opened up my fur harvester check. My family had wanted to go to Alaska, and that's when we decided that paid for our trip to Alaska that year. And my mom's gone now, and my dad's gone, but my mother, my wife, my daughter, we actually went to Alaska for 3 weeks, and that was because of the fur industry.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even with the low prices, I get at least 1 or 2 emails a week from guys that listen to the podcast that have never trapped before in their lives, and they're just getting started. So there's still a desire to trap.
Well, I guarantee you, my friend, that trapping today will get a couple extra people hooked on it, and thank you for doing that. In fact, when I seen your site, I was quick to, was I your first? No, you actually had an advertiser before me.
You were the second.
Yeah. So I recognize that, after talking to you, that it was good information for trappers.
So do you want to talk about Lenin lures?
Sure.
That's another, I guess that's a pretty big part of what you do, right?
Yeah, it was, that's the part I almost enjoy the most. I got to put away all my formulas that I was trying to prove, and basically handed over formulas that worked for 100 years. So, that made my life a lot easier. So what I was trying to figure out, Mr. Lenin taught me.
Yeah, so for people who don't know the name Herb Lenin, which most I think do, but for the new guys, you tell us a little bit about the history there.
Yep, Herb Lenin was probably trapping before 1924, but 1924 is when he started his lure company. Herb Lenin is definitely one of the innovators in the industry. Very few lure companies are still here today from back in that time frame. He was one of the first guys to write trapping books. I think I gave you a couple copies to review, and thank you. You gave them back.
Yep.
But basically, recopies have never been made. You know, there was whatever thousands of copies that went out, and the reason for the recopies not being republished, it was simply to honor all the people that had that book. And I think I seen one time when you gave an opinion on the value. And
I was
went
low.
back on to say that I've not seen a copy sell for less than $100, or I'd stack them up myself. So anybody got a copy, you got a book there that's worth some money. So
absolutely, since then I've looked and I can't find them. I figured $40 or $50, but it sounds like
there's guys out there with them, but they won't part with them, and they're part of a collection. And but anyways, also, to my knowledge, he also prepared, it was on 8mm tapes, and did I get you a copy of the DVD?
You sure did, and that was really awesome to watch. I watched that with my 2 little boys, and it was just so cool.
Really great. Not only was he an innovator back then, he had the foresight to document it.
Yes.
And, you know, he is one of the things I read, you know, when I was younger, before doing a supply company. He amazed me, like you see PCS Outdoors all over the place now. Well, that's the way it was back in those days. Herb Lenin's articles and Herb Lenin's ads were everywhere.
Okay.
And so that brand, you know, it had a push to go. And then when the Lenins got older, they never had to advertise because everybody already knew of their brand. And so basically Herb was the founder, and Asa is one of a few sons that ended up for the longest time up to the time he passed it over to me, and he only quit doing the lure business because he had a stroke and wasn't physically able to do it anymore.
Is Asa still around?
Asa is still around.
Good.
And he's going to be around for a while. So,
good.
Only bummer is he lives about a 6-hour drive away. So we get up there when we can, and anytime we go up there, he always takes the time to go to dinner with Sherry and I. And I'll tell you a little story. So we don't get him to usually go taking a ride. It's been years since when we were younger. I remember, taking a ride with him and doing a couple things. But last summer, Bobby wouldn't have went if I asked about a set post set and doing some things, but Sherry asked some questions about something she read, my wife, and next thing you know, we were out there looking for pine knots to make a scent post set with,
Nice.
and the next thing you know, we were on the 2 tracks in the UP all day long driving around. So that was a great day.
So Asa was quite a trapper himself too.
Yes, he was.
And
he trapped
learned
during the bounty days. I actually have pictures on LenonLures.com where Asa had a whole bunch of weasels when he was like 8, 9 years old with his brother, a whole pile of weasels. He had a mini bike where he had a couple coyotes strapped on it. And Mr. Lenin, Asa, I have probably had 1,000,000 cups of coffee kneeling next to him just like my grandfather, listening to stories.
Yeah.
And his wife has passed now, but they're two of really high on my list of folks that have taught me stuff, both trapping and looks out for he's always concerned about my daughter, and he was just a very dear friend. He is a dear friend. He's still here with us today.
And he has an incredible amount of lure making knowledge. I know he shared that on
incredible amount of lure knowledge, and I know that the sad thing, we had talked about going to Alaska with him and his wife Maria when we were transitioning, and before we even announced to the world that we had purchased the company and we're going to resume Lenin Lures from our residence, Maria passed away during what was supposed to be a routine type operation.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, but this is when I first took it over, so Asa taught me and everything, but it was different than full-scale production, so I didn't want to bother Asa, and when I was on my own, about 2 weeks, Asa called up, because he was heartbroken after losing Maria, and he called me up one day and said, "You need a little help," and ever since then, he's been right there if I have any questions or anything else, and obviously there's fewer and fewer questions as we go, but a couple neat things that we've worked on together since we had the company is we put Lenin's Wolf Nature Call back on the market.
Yeah.
And it was a neat one. What caused that, when we were cleaning out the lure shed, he was trying to get me everything he could that would help me when I got back to my operation where my lure room's going to be. Mm-hmm. And we found a bottle from the 30s that Herb Lenin wrote on, and then we found the recipe cards in a different box for the Nature Call. But we actually had several ounces of the Wolf Nature Call that I still have.
Nice.
And
so you could use it as a reference.
As a reference to consistency and odor and compounds used in it, and the aging process, and et cetera. So we worked on that one together. And then our newest one, the only other we put skunk back on the market, but that was no big deal because we had the recipe card and Asa knew how to do it. He had to show me so I could put it back on the market.
Yeah.
But our newest one that we did together, and I've not put a Lenin's that is my own yet, which will not happen until it could not happen without Asa here, but we came out with one where Asa actually so we were talking about what we could do on a project sometime a year ago, and Asa, 2 years ago, my wife was helping me out in the background there, Sherry. But anyways, Asa envisioned with a raccoon and the new DP market that we needed a lure that would have some eye appeal, okay? So this new raccoon lure that we have, which is called Special Raccoon Lure number 3. But basically, you've seen the texture of our muskrat lure where it doesn't wash away.
It's waterproof. Yep.
Yeah, similar to your long-distance call, which is a good lure. But in other words, it's pitch red like blood, and it has that consistency of not washing away, but still releasing the odor. And then it has some ingredients in there from proven in our other lures and some other stuff that we knew. And basically, it's a really effective raccoon lure. And then what I found out from some videos and tracks in the sand, it's actually a super effective on fox and coyote too. So,
really? Huh.
Yep. So it's a great lure in a dirt hole.
And so one of the things that's really impressed me is that you have been very adamant that you are using the exact same formulas, the same ingredients, and everything is as consistent as it was when Herb was making those lures.
Which is critically important, because if the color deviates or the odor deviates, those customers that literally, there's customers that use that lure for 50 years in a row, 40 years in a row, and 30 years in a row. And in the beginning, when I put out a couple batches that weren't properly ground, properly aged, I got my butt chewed out. And I made it up with those trappers.
So
at
you
least
learned
I tried.
from experience,
so,
yeah. Huh.
Yes, and it wasn't on purpose that I deviated. It's just a lot to try to do. And as I mentioned, we had that several-month period where I really did not need to be bothering Mr. Lenin, which would help me any time, but I was not going to, no matter what the circumstances were at that time.
So did you find yourself with, there must have been ingredients that he used in the past that are very difficult to find nowadays. Did you have any challenges with that?
There's been no challenges since the transition, but the challenges is something that he's already let me know alternatives should things come up.
Okay, so Asa had to deal with a lot of that probably when he was...
Over the 100 years there has been, and some of them will just make sense. Tonquin musk reel used to be available. There's just multiple ingredients that used to be available that eventually went away.
Yeah.
And there had to be substitutes that were close. And luckily in the last 10 years, I'm not aware of any switch of, compounds.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Beaver castor, mink gland, skunk musk, those remain and will always remain the key components to good lures.
Right. Yep. And when are you going to share the secret of what's in that martin lure?
We never will tell the recipe of any Lenin lures because I can't disclose the amount that I had to persuade my wife to give to Mr. Lenin, or I should say, Mr. Lenin told me what I had to get him, and I was not going to negotiate for the best lure company in the land. So either way we put it, I won't disclose the recipes.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really, I've used that Martin Super All Call this past season, and I just really, there's something unique about it. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it's different than any of the other martin lures I've used. So. Well,
that's good to hear from a martin trapper, because I've seen some where you post that you do martin and you talk about it. I've caught martin, but I've never been able to keep a martin, nor have I ever intentionally caught a martin. So for viewers out there that you see where you do a lot of the martin in the snow and you have the elevated sets and stuff, is that correct, the way I understand it?
They did have to be elevated. Now we're using boxes that can be on the ground.
Okay.
But it's
But how I ended up getting martin was up in the UP when I trapped and fisher, but I was simply trapping fox and coyote on trails and bobcat, and they would get into my dirt hole sets.
Yep.
So that's obviously common in Maine too, then, where you get incidentals and those type sets.
Yeah, early
in northern Michigan. See, in northern Michigan, below the bridge, we don't have the martin and fisher. Very isolated sightings, to my knowledge.
Oh, you don't even have fisher there?
No, not in below the bridge. Now, above the bridge, there is definitely fisher and martin.
Yep.
Pretty much spread out across the UP. And wolves. Now, do you guys have wolves?
Not yet.
You don't have wolves, eh?
No, but our coyotes have a lot of wolf genetics in them.
Okay.
I guess they did some DNA work years ago that found that I think it was up to 25% of the DNA in our coyotes was passed
So you
down
have
from
big
wolves.
coyotes.
They are big,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
big, but they're
No,
not
it's
really
been
good in the
15
market. You know, they're really
No.
like a coarse hair, and they're all kinds of different colors. They don't
Okay.
they don't sell like those Western coyotes do.
Now that's interesting when you talk about the market, because when I trapped coyotes in the UP, I would get a really good price for them, and then when I trap them in below the bridge, what I call, or southern Michigan, then I don't see the quality that I seen up in the UP.
Huh. Yeah.
So, yep.
That's
But the guys up in the UP, there was some wolves when I was up there, but take 15 years. And when I go up, I go to 3 conventions in the UP every year, and I know a lot of trappers up there. And the way they talk about it, it's routine to catch them every single year in their coyote sets.
Yeah, it
Which
sounds
they
like,
don't like it.
Yep, but will they may be able to trap for them someday, right? They're talking about delisting.
Yeah, but until they do it.
Yep, until they do it, it's just a pain.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, well, John, this has been great. I really appreciate talking with you. I always enjoy talking with you, but it's great to get to share stuff with people.
Likewise, and obviously I don't think we ever talked this long. I'm glad I ate a bowl of goulash when I first got in the door.
I was wondering if I was going to interrupt.
Wouldn't have been able to put up through this, so I cheated 5 minutes before I called you.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover you want to talk about?
No, as you know, you and I could probably talk for a week, so there comes a time you got to cap it off, and I just appreciate the opportunity, because always take some promotion, and both trapping and our organization. So
Sounds
we're
good.
just blessed by a lot of wonderful organizations out there and a great industry and thousands of trappers that keep it all going.
All right. Well, thanks for being on, and we will have you on again in the future, I hope.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
All right. Take care, John.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.